I just want to say something too. We've had some calls, people calling into the station, upset about us constantly breaking in. And it's very important for us to reiterate to you that when we are in a tornado warning, it may not be in your county, but it is a neighbor's county. And it is the law. It is our responsibility that we do have to break in during a tornado warning, because it's our obligation to spread the news and keep people safe.
That's right. And I saw a comment earlier on social media. I've been trying to check that in between all of these cut-ins. And I also want to mention, when I talk about getting to safety, that includes every bit of your family. That includes pets. We want them in safe quarters as well. Once again, that red polygon, that's a tornado warning. And as much as I would love to give my voice a rest at this point, it's more important that we keep communities safe. And so I know it is not ideal to have us keep breaking in, especially every 15 minutes or so with a new pop-up of a severe thunderstorm warning or tornado warning. But this is pretty important. We want to keep people safe. We want to keep you and your neighbors safe. And honestly, if I go home tonight, that's what matters. That's what matters, that I was able, and Kelly was able, and WMAR was able to at least inform you of these things. And we're seeing radar indicated rotation. Doesn't mean it's on the ground. We haven't had any reports saying there was a tornado on the ground. But this can still cause damage to oneself or one's property. And that's enough to warrant us coming on air and talking about it. I'll step off of my soapbox here, but I just really want to extend my concerns with this, because this has a lot of rain associated with it. We haven't seen a whole lot of wind damage, but not too long ago, we saw at the, I-97 and 32 corridor.
The wind blown down that sign.
Exactly, snapped in half. We want to keep you guys safe. And we are seeing the potential for some damage to property here. At the very least, it's more important if it, would impact you as a person. And that's what we're concerned about. So right here, there's that red and that green mixing that we never like to see with storm relative velocity here. Base velocity also going to show a little bit of that red and green here. So we have winds coming both towards and away from radar. And to give you a little bit of an insider knowledge with this, when winds come in, green highlighted as we look at storm relative velocity and base velocity, winds coming in signified by green. Winds going away signified by red. Sometimes they meet and they battle it out, and each force has its own power behind it, and that causes rotation. Radar will pick up on that rotation. This is one of the many devices that we use with radar to help us see inside the storm. Sometimes the rain is just too messy, like what we see here on reflectivity, the traditional radar. So it's really hard to see any of that rotation just by this image alone. We also look at correlation coefficient, and there's a little bit of activity going on here that might be showing a little bit of hail, signifying this is a strong thunderstorm. So we look at all these things inside of the polygon to give you a little bit more information as to what's going on.
And I checked with our crews that were near the harbor and downtown where it was pouring. You were right, you called it sideways rain. They said that it was not hail at that point downtown, so I'm not exactly sure what they're looking at now. Looks like we have Abigail, more lightning strikes?
Yes, just to the north of Chestertown, we are seeing quite a bit of lightning. You see this fuchsia color here, that signifies a little bit of a strengthening, highlighted rain here, especially on reflectivity. And that lightning, a little concerning, but we're not seeing huge amounts jumping out at us. But this just shows us that there's still some strength with this right here. This is one of our stronger ones that we have seen tonight, and it's had a little bit more instability to tap into. And as we look at National Weather Service, we're waiting to hear a little bit more about the history of this storm here. But this is what was over Stevensville, or Stevenson, I need to get that correct. But just Stevensville here, and Highway 301. It pushed to the north, it went over some water, and they allowed it to expire. But here's the thing, it grouped back together, and they put out a new polygon, a new tornado warning once it got its act together and got back over land near Cliff City, Conquest Beach, Ashland Landing, Johnsontown, and that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing high winds and we're seeing a little bit of rotation still associated with this system. So if you're in these areas highlighted by that red polygon, if you see the name of your town or city, this is the time to get indoors, that safe space. I know we've shown it a couple of times, but if you guys can get the graphic to detail what a safe space is, we can talk about it a little bit here in detail and make sure that people are, in their safe space.
Most important is that lowest floor of your home. You really need to seek shelter immediately. And lowest floor, we're talking about the basement, the lowest spot in the house. No windows, so an interior room with no windows. I've even heard some suggest get into a bathtub, but you can if the weather is running that bad. Cover yourself with pillows, blankets, and that is to protect you against the possibility of flying debris, because you want to be safe as much as you can given a situation like this one. And you can see that the storm is moving relatively quickly. I can't recall the last time that we were on and off this much for a tornado warning within the short period that we've seen so far this evening.
Yeah, so we've had a lot of elements in place, a lot of ingredients, as I've been terming it all night, coming together, but it'll go over areas like the bay, like water, that breaks it apart. But once it gets back over land, it can tap into that warmth that we got throughout the afternoon hours and rebloom, let's term it here, redevelop and group together and create that rotation again. We talked earlier in the 5 o'clock hour about storms in West Virginia and down towards the Carolinas. And we explained knowing the history of these systems is really important. It's as important as knowing what's happening in the now, because it gives us a little context of these storms. We can see inside them. And we saw rotation in West Virginia and Virginia first. With that, we saw that it had a history of at least radar indicated rotation. And as it moved closer towards us, we had to brace for that possible impact, that possible restructuring as these systems pushed a little further in. I do want to highlight, you're going to see this polygon get shorter and shorter. It was a little bit longer than Rock Hall at its initial start around 9:30, which was an extension really of that one that was over Stevensville, but it regrouped, and so it got a new polygon. It's condensing now. You're seeing a lot of that lightning outside of this polygon here, which bodes well. We're getting a little bit clearer of a picture as far as radar goes with this system. You can see that little bit of rotation right at the very edge to the east of Rock Hall where that lightning is associated, and the polygon is highlighting the areas it is heading towards. So Chestertown, Churchill, you are still in the polygon. You still need to stay in your safe space. This includes Kings Court, Rolfs, it includes Johnsontown, Ashland Landing, Deerfield, Browns Corner, Churchill, Ewingville, I believe, and Ben Lee Estates. You are all still in this polygon that is until 10 p.m. And with the history of the National Weather Service tonight, they're erring on the side of caution, which I am actually very thankful for. They are letting these tornado warnings stay towards the end of their period, their lifespan here. And that's just the err on the side of caution, because these have a history of redeveloping. You don't want to expire a tornado warning and then have it redevelop moments later. You want to make sure people are staying in their safe space and getting the most up-to-date information. And so they've been really good about that tonight.
In looking at Baltimore City, contacting with their crews there in terms of the harbor, the rain that was coming down so hard earlier has now moved out. And I don't know that if it's moving to Baltimore County where we are, because I can hear the rain from the studio, what's happening outside in Towson right now. Not seeing any reports, and this is all good news to share, no reports of downed trees, damaged power lines, any of those things. But again, I'm sure the downed trees will be something that we'll have to continue to watch over the next couple of days because of the ground being so saturated from the rain that we have seen this week and the rain coming down in such a short period of time. We've seen over the past couple of days.
Yes, especially especially today. We've seen quite a bit of rain push through, and we'll look at that total amounts, or at least suggested radar indicated amounts here in just a second. I do want to say a new flash flood warning has popped up near Annapolis, and this is through 4 a.m. in Anne Arundel County. So be mindful of this. You don't see a whole lot of rain in this area just yet, but that does not mean you're out of the woods. We have this rotation with this moisture wrapped around a low pressure system, and it's going to continue to move over the same path as before, and this can cause some flooding issues. I also want to mention, due to the National Weather Service here giving us a little bit of an update, emergency services for Baltimore City saying they have had flash flooding on Frederick Avenue in Hillen at 35th Streets in Baltimore City. And so with that, we've seen a lot of rain push through. You're seeing a lot of kickback here at 695. And so that is going to continue to be an issue even outside of these storms pushing in. We're seeing a little lightning to the south and near Easton. I'm actually going to take a few things off of here and stop the motion so you guys can get a clearer picture of what's going on and what I'm looking at. But we're getting a little bit more activity near Easton. It's not overly abundant with lightning activity, but it's certainly something that has piqued my interest because off towards the south near Easton, we haven't had as much development, and they're still relatively warm at this time. And so that's something to monitor because we've seen a lot of these things reform. And we're seeing a little bit of these winds starting to bump against each other near Cambridge. Now, this is a little further out from our radar site, so take it with a grain of salt, but I'm seeing some lightning associated with it. We could see at least a thunderstorm warning possibly come out of this. So looking to the south, even though it's outside of our viewership, that's something to look at because this system has been tracking to the north and to the east. And so it will start to push towards Denton and Centerville and Chestertown. And even though they're trying to stabilize with all of this rain currently, that doesn't mean it can't still regroup. It still has that potential. So we really need to be mindful of everything that's going on here and having a lot of eyes on radar. We're also seeing a lot of lightning to the north of Chestertown, near Galena, near Betterton, near Cecilton, near Highway 544, and still clipping Highway 301. So this is also something to keep an eye on. This shows us that maybe a thunderstorm is trying to get its act together, and the eastern shoreline right before it gets to Delaware was one of our warmest spots still left over after sunset. So, Kelly, I'm going to take a drink because my voice is giving out, but I will be back in just a second.
Oh, take a break. You've been doing a lot tonight. Again, we've been monitoring the storms probably since just before 7 o'clock tonight when a lot of the warnings started coming in near our area. And at that point, Abigail knew that it was heading in our direction, and National Weather Service calling the tornado warnings early. When we have a tornado warning, we go on the air and we stay on the air until it has been cleared by the National Weather Service. They've been coming on and off throughout the evening. And when I say in our area, we're talking about obviously Howard County, we're talking about Anne Arundel County, Queen Anne's County. Haven't seen much activity other than the rain and now some lightning strikes in Baltimore City and Baltimore County, but areas that we're still keeping a close eye on. The rain has been steady throughout the night. Looking at 695 West and Providence Road over here in the Towson area, the rain's still coming down, actually heavier than it was earlier, but again, haven't seen much lightning activity and not a lot of power outages, so that is a good indication that maybe this is not much wind driven. As you'd said earlier, Abigail, you said that we were expecting this to be a rain driven event, and it has been so far. Crews out in the field all over and keeping an eye on the situation for us, and not a lot of reports of damage. No, actually no reports of damage, just heavy rain on and off. And that is very fortunate for the folks in Dundalk who dealt with that tornado that blew through about 2 weeks ago. Actually, it was exactly 2 weeks ago today, where we talked to some folks earlier today who were still picking up the pieces, and again, doing that in preparation for what they were expecting, the potential of that coming their way tonight. And again, though, at this point, you're seeing a lot of the rain on the eastern shore. And watching Stevensville, and was that Churchill, Bully Rock?
Yes.
Other
Just a little.
Chesterstown, Rock
Yes,
Hall.
further to the east.
And those were areas that you've been watching throughout the night in terms of that
Tornado warning.
tornado warning, but you called it something else. It was a technical term in terms of what you were watching, in terms of it getting smaller, getting bigger.
Oh, condensing just a little bit.
Yeah.
We're seeing a little less of that coupling with rotation. It's still there. I do also want to highlight, we've been under a tornado watch since around the 5 o'clock hour, and they have condensed that as well, primarily just to the eastern shore, where we're seeing that last leg of activity before we roll into hopefully Saturday, and where we see a little bit of the diminishing of some of this instability. So I do want to say the National Weather Service has removed some of the very western counties of Maryland from this tornado watch. It does look still to be until midnight. And so that is something to be mindful of. The Storm Prediction Center still has us under a slight risk for the rest of today. And I do also want to mention here, as we go through a quick forecast, and you see rain still on those roadways, I-83 south of Old Pimlico Road and I-83 north, you're seeing a lot of water, a lot of lights bouncing that water reflectivity back at you. So drive safe, make sure those low beams are on at times, especially if you're near another person. That can affect their eyesight and eventually their driving. But just make sure that you are being courteous if you have to be on the roadways. This is all part of a low pressure system that has been wreaking havoc on us as we entered into the evening newscasts. And it's going to continue to bring rain into our forecast even as we go into Saturday. So I briefly want to take you through Futurecast and talk about Saturday, and then we will circle back to radar to get a look at this tornado warning that is still very much alive for at least the next 4 minutes. So, as we take you through Futurecast, this is showing the last leg of this system. Barron's model is showing it moving out pretty much around the 10 o'clock hour, and then another band of rain sweeping in before we roll into early Saturday morning. And you would hope that this would be it for rain, but it's not. We have another batch, little pockets of pop-up showers and possibly storms pushing through by midday and late afternoon before this finally moves out of here and that low pressure system that's wrapping moisture around us moves offshore. High pressure will then move in, which is good. We want that. But as we look towards Saturday, a cold front, and a strong one at that, sweeps through behind this system, and that is going to drive our winds up. A blustery day, and I want to also say this is a big factor in the safety of going out the next day. Our grounds are saturated. We have flooded plains at this point in portions of the city, and to the west of the city, portions of Howard County, Baltimore County, and maybe even trying to clip Carroll County, at least by the end of the night. And Anne Arundel County as well. When we see high winds like this, gusts anywhere from 20 to 30 miles per hour, that could also cause some issues with already compromised tree limbs or compromised trees in general. So I want you guys to be really careful with that.
We also are now seeing a few more power outages, as you mentioned, the possibility of high winds. Right now, we're up to 1,252 customers impacted by the storm so far tonight.
Okay.
And so it could be something that we see continue to rise because, again, this is a storm that we're going to see tomorrow as well, correct? Maybe not this magnitude, but this is going to continue at least throughout tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow?
Yeah. It's associated with this low pressure system that has been hovering over us. And with that, we're going to see counterclockwise rotation of that moisture. So that's why flooding is one of our primary concerns tonight. We're seeing that moisture wrap around and swing through, and in that same path as this low pressure system moves to the east, we'll see another batch push through, and this can cause some very heavy rainfall and some flooding. We're still seeing some coupling here as we look at velocity on radar. So just a heads up there, we're not out of the woods for Chestertown, for Heather Heights, for Piney Grove, Rolfs, River Edge, It looks like Beck's Landing, it's just barely clipping you at this point, but Chesmar and Ewingsville, you still very much are in this active polygon. So stay in your safe space. And I also want to show you guys accumulation that we've had from this system. This kind of beigey green color further to the south, and what warranted this flash flood warning until 4 a.m. for Anne Arundel County, is showing quite a bit of rain coming down with these storms. Over 2 inches. Over 2 inches near Annapolis and in portions of Anne Arundel County. 2.5 as we look a little closer towards home, as we look towards just to the east of Severn, if it'll let me move over here, just to the south of Columbia. This does include just to the north of Jessup. And just because you're not in this beige color does not mean you haven't gotten excessive rain. Near Jessup, we've still seen close to 1.5 inches of rain be dumped from these thunderstorms. So much rain has pushed through. Near 2 inches near Towson, over 2 inches a little closer to Towson, near Route 1, 2.2. So a lot of rain associated with this. And walking into Friday, outside of the potential for some severe storms, our primary concern was rain, and that's still holding pretty strong. It looks like that has been allowed to expire off towards the eastern shoreline. Thankfully, they have allowed that tornado warning to expire, so we can start wrapping up. We can take another breather. There's no guarantee that we won't come back on 15 minutes later, but hopefully, and I'm knocking on wood here, we are going to see a little bit more stability. I know I sound like a broken record, but I am really hopeful that this was the last round, especially since that warm batch of air off towards the eastern shoreline was the last batch to tap into. We've lost that sunlight. We've lost that momentum. We'll keep an eye on things, but we'll break in as needed, and hopefully, you won't hear from me much more tonight. This has been your Severe Weather Alert.